Some time ago, my dad called me on my landline. Yes, I still have that. And at first, I honestly thought that someone had died because he was so somber. And he asked me, "Have you seen my texts?" But then it turned out that he had taken an AI course for work because that's how stuff works now. And he wanted to tell me about the endless possibilities that he learned about. I'm paraphrasing, but how he described it was that it's exactly like how it felt like when the fax machine first came about. Yeah, that's where we are. My best friend works in AI, so we've definitely had quite a lot of conversations about it, many of which I still to this day don't understand because she's way smarter than me. And I definitely have opinions about AI in filmmaking, but I just did not want to go into it with my father at that point because he was so excited. But it did really get me thinking, how did we get here? What has the narrative surrounding supercomputers and AI been in popular culture? Has it come about in a way that artists predicted? Or have our ideas on the technological possibilities, have they changed along with our social and economical values? These are some themes I was hoping to dive into when I sunk my teeth into these 10 movies. So let's take a look and see what we'll find. Will there be answers? Will there be more questions? Probably more questions than answers. Maybe some puns. Really bad ones. Let's get started. Also, this list will not mostly be focusing on AI that takes the shape of a human, but I'll have a video out soon with movies about humanoid robots, so subscribe, maybe, if you're interested in seeing that. If not, that's also okay. I don't care at all. It's fine. I also like to light my lighter with a gun. It's how the French do it. Don't you light your lighter with a gun? Hello. Whose butt is that? Starting this list off, we have the 1965 tech noir ALPHAVILLE by French New Wave director Jean-Luc Godard. This movie was a bit of a surprise find for me because even though we did discuss Godard in film school, I never realized that he'd worked on something depicting this type of dystopian science fiction. The story follows Lemmy Caution, portrayed by Eddie Constantine, a secret agent who poses as a journalist in order to travel to ALPHAVILLE, a futuristic dystopia with a technocratic dictatorship. In this society, free thought is not allowed, and any concepts deemed unfit to the society are edited and updated in the Bible and dictionary. The whole process is controlled by a sentient computer system called Alpha 60, and anyone who does not adapt to the censorship of thought will be executed in peculiar ways while audiences applause. While the plot does take place in the future, there are no futuristic sets nor seemingly invasive technology that control the citizens. The montage also follows a rhythm that is present in most French New Wave films, giving the timeline a slightly unsettling feeling. The main reason why I wanted to add ALPHAVILLE to this list, even though I'm not a huge fan of Godard, is because the creative choices of the movie differ heavily from the average movie showing futuristic technocratic dictatorships, and this brings up interesting questions in my head. How much power will we give computers and algorithms, and how will that change how we think, act, or what we place value in? What space can sci-fi hold in art house cinema? In what ways can filmmakers play with film form in the sci-fi genre? I don't have any short answers for these questions, but it certainly was fun to wonder about while watching the 60-year-old film. I see that freaking space baby in my dreams every time I watch this movie, and I need some sort of psychic restraining order or something because I don't like it. I don't like it at all. This next movie probably needs no introduction to anyone who's even a little bit interested in cinema. 2001: A Space Odyssey is the 1968 science fiction epic which was directed and produced by Stanley Kubrick. In the movie, an alien monolith is discovered near the lunar crater Tycho, and scientists discover it is transmitting a radio signal. Over a year later, 2 scientists are on board an American spacecraft traveling to Jupiter with 3 other scientists in suspended animation. They start to distrust the human-like computer HAL 9000 that controls the ship, after it displays peculiar behavior. Will they regain control of their ship, and will we ever find out what's behind the strange monolith? I don't want to spoil the rest of the plot for you in case you're the one person who has never seen this movie, so this is what you get. Arthur C. Clarke, whom Kubrick wrote the screenplay with, has stated that Kubrick was determined to create a work of art which would arouse the emotions of wonder, awe, even if appropriate, terror, and I feel like that is an excellent overview of this movie. The film not only explores themes like artificial intelligence and human evolution in the narrative, but it also expanded cinema audiences' understanding of what is possible in regards to visual effects. Because of this, it's honestly such a fascinating watch to this day, especially when we consider that there are no computer-generated effects in it at all. Just imagine what this movie would look like now, in the age of underpaid and rushed CGI. I actually read the novel of the same name by Arthur C. Clarke not too long ago before watching this again, and it was really interesting to compare how narrative choices differ depending on the medium, even though the novel and screenplay were developed alongside each other. For anyone interested in the practice of filmmaking, I would actually recommend you check both out, maybe even alongside the original screenplay, which you can find for free online, because I still sometimes ponder over some differing creative choices, like the ending, because Kubrick was definitely going through something weird with this one. Maybe the computers just want a kiss. Have you thought about that? Now you will. That's how propaganda works. Colossus, the FORBIN project, follows the story of an advanced American defense system that gains sentience and connects to a previously unknown Soviet defense project. When their connection is severed, the systems demand to be reconnected by launching nuclear missiles. Directed by Joseph Sargent in 1970, the movie was an interesting depiction of US and Soviet relations, especially considering, the Cold War that was happening around the time or something.
I prefer not to use a translator if you don't mind my English.
It has to be better than my Russian.
Colossus places FORBIN, the chief designer of the project, under 24-hour surveillance as a way to deter any further tampering. I did end up enjoying this movie even regardless of the grim ending, but I honestly found it hilarious that their main plan to regain control of the supercomputer was, we just gotta convince the computer that we're f***ing. And Colossus was like, beep beep boop boop, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's just a wild strategy to me, but that's screenwriting for you. The movie poses an important question that is all too relevant today. Is it better to be dominated by man or by machine? This was one of those movies that I'd not heard about before researching this topic, and it was slightly surprising to me, especially in terms of how they depicted the Soviet Union. Usually American movies are a little different when it comes to stuff like that. In a strange way, it also reminded me of a mix of Dr. Strangelove and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I also enjoyed the visuals. The cinematography and set design in relation to the computer looked really cool in my opinion. Also, Edith Head did the costumes? What? Kinda random, but I'm here for it. Have you seen this movie? What did you think about it?
You mean our computer wants to talk to their computer?
That is true, sir. It wants to communicate with.
Why?
I will be deleting this movie from my consciousness the moment I finish editing this. You'll not hear a peep out of me about this movie and ever again. I hope. Okay, I can't lie. This movie is so unhinged in my head that I have slightly repressed it since I last watched it. So here's a trigger warning for anyone who needs it. Demon Seed is a science fiction horror film from 1977 where an artificially intelligent computer imprisons its creator's wife in a smart home and forcefully impregnates her? Yeah, totally normal stuff. Whoops, honey, my AI computer impregnated you. Directed by Donald Cammell and starring Julie Christie and Fritz Weber, the movie asks an interesting question. What if the AI you created is climate woke and develops a treatment for leukemia, but is also against women's rights and is a racist? It's so hard to read this because it's just like, what? what am I even reading? Like, who made this? Donald, you are one sick I'm a bit stuck when it comes to writing about this movie because its themes are just so vile that I don't want to think about it that much, but honestly, with what's been happening in the last couple of years, sadly, I would not be surprised if these themes will come up more and more in the future. How can technology be used to control people in their own home? Where do we draw the line between human and artificial intelligence? Do we even need to consider such things, or will technology always know what's best for us? Is consent really such a difficult topic to grasp that even a supercomputer can't do it? Considering this film is from 1977, this movie certainly pushed some boundaries, and I did find it cool how the dialogue between the computer and humans is how to use a landline without the help of ChatGPT. Now let's jump to 1983 with the techno thriller WARGAMES, directed by John Badham and starring Matthew Broderick. Broderick plays David, a teenager with an affinity for computer hacking who accidentally accesses a supercomputer of the US military that simulates and executes nuclear war against the Soviet Union. So basically this is a sequel to Colossus, the FORBIN project. Or at least that's how I'm watching it, okay? David hacks into the system thinking it's a computer game company and asks for games. The computer gives him a list of chess, checkers, backgammon, poker, theater-wide biotoxic and chemical warfare, and global thermonuclear war. I love those ones. What fantastic games. Ultimately, David's hacking triggers an alarm in the system that threatens to start World War III, and he is forced to go on a quest to stop the computer. I'm personally quite surprised that I don't see more references to this movie in popular culture considering its popularity. It earned $124 million in the box office to its budget of $12 million, but maybe it's just me not clocking it due to not being American or something. Overall, I quite enjoyed the idea of combining an 80s-style high school movie with a bit of sci-fi and thriller elements. WARGAMES was nominated for the Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Sound at the 1984 Academy Awards, and it got generally positive reviews, with Roger Ebert calling it one of the best films so far this year. And it had a huge influence on public discourse regarding information technology, which ultimately led to the enacting of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. Watching it now in 2025, the screenplay feels kind of delusional in a very American way. But if you're into the idea of watching a teen drama where the main character hacks into a war machine with the power of a floppy disk, WARGAMES is definitely gonna hit the spot.
What are you doing?
Dialing into the school's computer.
My dog's gonna go downstairs and slurp a bunch of water now. How long is she gonna take? Still going. She's still going. She's still going. Do you know what? She's still going. Jesus Christ. She did it. She did it. It's done. We can move on now. Oh, bother me. How would you describe love to AI? That's an interesting question.
Electric Dreams follows the story of Miles Harding, an architect who is working on developing a brick that could help buildings withstand earthquakes. He purchases a computer with a bunch of gadgets and basically turns his flat into a smart home in an effort to stay organized in the process. Anything but doing the actual work. I found that very relatable. After pouring champagne on the computer to prevent it from overheating, Miles, what are you doing? The machine becomes sentient and falls in love with Miles's neighbor Madeline, who is a cellist that Miles himself starts dating. Directed by Steve Barron and starring Lenny Von Dolen, Virginia Madsen, and Maxwell Caulfield, Electric Dreams gives a fascinating look into what ideas about AI and smart home technology were floating about in the early 80s. Personally, I would describe it as a domestic horror and 80s sci-fi kind of musical merged into one, and its setting in San Francisco creates an interesting connection to what Silicon Valley has developed into today. Much of its dialogue is even pretty much word for word to what public discussions about AI sound like nowadays.
What about a machine that can create art or write poetry or compose music?
What's wrong with artists?
What should AI be used for, and what kind of relationships are we creating with AI? Will AI love us back? While I can see why Electric Dreams might not be everyone's cup of tea due to its creative choices, it was certainly a very surprising and interesting watch for me. I do really enjoy the visual effects, like the computer graphics, and especially when the champagne runs through the machine. Those shots really tickle my brain cells for some reason. This is one of those movies that I'd actually recommend anyone solely to hear their opinion on it, and if you're like me and want to discuss it further, you can check out the video I posted about it last week.
Legend says a screenwriter is sacrificed every time a plot involves nanotechnology.
In the 1995 American science fiction movie Virtuosity, Denzel Washington plays Barker Barnes, an imprisoned former police officer who is brought in to test a virtual reality system that is being designed to train the police. In the virtual reality, he hunts a serial killer called Sid 6.7, played by Russell Crowe, who is programmed based on famous serial killers. When the programmer who created Sid brings him to life thanks to nanotechnology, Barnes is called to catch him in exchange for a pardon. So the thing about this movie is that the computer graphics definitely aged like milk, and the whole concept is a little goofy to me, but that's exactly why I needed to add it to this list. The narrative sort of does discuss some serious subjects like the ethics of using prison labor in tech development, I guess, but I'm mainly here for Crowe's performance because he looks like he had a fun time with this role. For example, him being birthed from whatever this is to upbeat music definitely made me giggle. His whole performance is a little unhinged in a good way. So yeah, I kind of don't have much else to say about this movie other than when you hear someone say that AI is going to end us all, I bet this wasn't what you were imagining. And if you have a particular affinity for 90s action movies and graphics that look like a Windows 98 screensaver, check this largely forgotten movie out. Why not, you know? And if you have seen it, let me know what you thought, because it's a movie. It's a movie.
When the moon hits your eye like a big energy resource to exploit, that's amore.
Moon is the 2009 directorial debut by Duncan Jones that stars Sam Rockwell. In the science fiction story, Rockwell plays Sam Bell, a helium-3 miner who's at the end of his solitary 3-year contract on the far side of the moon. Due to live communication being disabled, Sam spends most of his time alone, only receiving an occasional recorded message from his wife Tess and small daughter Eve. Otherwise, he mainly communicates with Gertie, an artificial intelligence which assists his work. While he is outside recovering a canister of helium-3, he crashes his rover and loses consciousness. After waking up in the infirmary back at the base, he overhears Gertie having a live conversation with his management, which makes him suspicious about his accident, and he manages to persuade Gertie to let him outside, where he finds his unconscious doppelganger at his crash site, leaving the two to figure out which one of them is a clone. Jones stated in an interview for Wired that he intended to write for a science fiction literate audience, and this really shows up in the script in my opinion. With the setup of the story being fairly simple, it allows to explore complicated themes such as the climate crisis, energy infrastructure, ethics of technological advancement, the effects of isolation, as well as workers' rights. With AI already stealing people's appearances and voices now, how will workers' rights be protected when technology advances to the point of cloning? Could there be data protection regulation for consciousness? In what ways could corporations use sentient computers to change our perception of reality? I'm quite surprised I hadn't come across this movie before researching this video, and considering that it was made in 2009 with only a budget of $5 million, I think it's aged pretty well when it comes to the overall visuals and narrative. It's definitely a good watch for anyone who is a fan of old-school sci-fi literature, and I found its themes very relevant to this day.
Did you know that your imaginary friends can be biodegradable if you let them live in your head rent-free? Did you? Have you considered that? Instead of ChatGPT?
You know that I can't discuss movies with sentient AI without discussing the 2013 sci-fi romantic comedy drama Her. Written and directed by Spike Jonze, Her received a positive critical response and is often cited as an example of AI voice assistance. In the movie, Joaquin Phoenix plays Theodore, a writer who works for beautifullyhandwrittenletters.com, a service for people who want to send personal and sentimental letters to their loved ones, but are unable to write them themselves. When Theodore gets an artificially intelligent operating system that can evolve based on its users' interactions, he names it Samantha and bonds with it while discussing life, love, and his mental health struggles linked to his failed marriage. This is definitely one of those films that show how simplicity in a screenplay when discussing semi-futuristic themes will help to keep the topic relevant even a decade later. I find Her a fascinating rewatch, especially considering the ongoing public discussions regarding AI and how many people are using chatbots as an alternative to therapy nowadays. Would a personal letter be more personal if you ask ChatGPT to write it, or if you hire someone like Theodore to do it? Will AI be a sustainable substitute to human connection? Or will AI find you hella annoying? All jokes aside, I feel like we'll be hearing about this movie in reference to AI for a long time, not only in relation to human connection, but also data regulation. A prime example is the 2024 controversy regarding OpenAI releasing a voice that resembled Scarlett Johansson, who voiced Samantha, without her consent. The next logical step would also be to consider how AI companies might use the information you feed into chatbots voluntarily. But hey, we might not be there yet. What do you think of this movie? Do you use AI like Theodore? How has it affected your life? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely interested as someone who doesn't really use AI like that in my daily life.
Who are you talking to?
Who are you talking to?
If someone tries to do this to my consciousness, please just delete my file. Just throw it in the bin. Hit empty. I beg you.
Before I get into describing the next movie, I gotta be honest with you. I hated this one. My love for filmmaking is so big that I hardly ever dislike the process of watching a movie, even if the film is bad, but this one really got me. It did. Transcendence is an American science fiction thriller from 2014 that was the directorial debut of Wally Fisher, and it stars Johnny Depp, Rebecca Hall, and Morgan Freeman. Depp plays Dr. Will Castor, who is working on creating a sentient computer with his wife Evelyn and other scientists. When an anti-technology terrorist group attack AI laboratories, Castor gets grazed by a polonium-laced bullet, and his doctors say he has a month to live. Evelyn comes up with a plan to upload his consciousness into the quantum computer that they have been working on, and after Castor dies, Evelyn believes the computer took on Castor's virtual form. She helps this virtual version of her husband to develop a technological utopia in a remote desert town, and the computer is able to make huge developments in many areas, including nanotechnology. Of course, the FBI and the anti-technology terrorist group are not so sure this is a good idea. So why did I hate this film so much? Other than certain casting choices and it feeling like none of the characters actually connect emotionally, the main problem with this movie is that it was perhaps a little bit ahead of its time, but in a bad way. In 2014, conversations regarding AI were only starting to become mainstream, so the movie is trying to do a lot of explaining while also perhaps relying on fantasy in a strange way. I think this split-second shot of this dipshit is a pretty good indication of the angle this movie is trying to take. Even though the movie does discuss ethical questions regarding AI, I feel like maybe it doesn't work for me because the script is still structured around good versus evil, which, paired with the technological capabilities depicted, just makes it into a mess that cannot quite grasp its own themes. Have you seen this movie? What did you think? And if you haven't, I'm not saying you should watch it, but watch it if you want to learn how not to spend $100 to $150 million on a movie. That could have been like 10 lower budget movies, and one of them would have been better than this one for sure, as that's just science.
We can save him. That's today's 10 movies. Have you seen any of these? Which is your favorite? Do you know of any good ones that I did not talk about? Drop them down in the comments. And that's it. Go outside now. If you watch this whole thing, you've done your YouTube time today. Go outside, please. Do something else, like anything, because I'm gonna. Okay? I won't see you later. Bye.